In 1866, a Texas rancher named Charles Goodnight changed life on the open range forever by fastening a simple wooden pantry box to the back of an old army wagon. That invention, later known as the chuck wagon, became the heart of survival for cowboys driving cattle across vast, unforgiving land. Yet the truth of what those men actually ate has rarely been shown the way it really was. Hidden behind romanticized stories were meals born out of necessity, creativity, and sometimes desperation. Among them were dishes so strange they earned names too crude to repeat, and others that unknowingly used chemical processes modern science would only later explain. These meals carried thousands of cowboys across brutal terrain stretching from South Texas to the railheads of Kansas, with no refrigeration, no steady supply lines, and no margin for waste, only fire, dust, and determination. Before anything resembling comfort appeared on the trail, survival started with the simplest ration imaginable: hardtack. These dense crackers, made from nothing but flour and water, were nearly indestructible. They could last for months without spoiling, tucked into saddlebags, as a last line of defense against hunger. Eating them, however, was another challenge entirely. Hard enough to crack teeth, they had to be softened in bacon grease or coffee before becoming chewable. Sometimes they were fried after soaking, giving them a bit of texture. Tasteless by design, hardtack wasn't meant to be enjoyable. It was meant to keep a man standing when nothing else was left. Beans formed the backbone of nearly every meal that followed. Pinto beans, dried and durable, were the ultimate trail staple. Cooked slowly in cast-iron pots buried in coals, they absorbed the flavors of salt pork, wild onions, or chili peppers when available. By evening, they became a thick, smoky mixture that stuck to ribs and sustained cowboys through long nights of watch duty. Beans were eaten constantly, morning, night, and even cold in between, despite the jokes and complaints that followed. Protein came in another enduring form: jerky. Strips of lean beef were salted and dried in the sun or over smoke until nearly all moisture disappeared. This made the meat incredibly light and long-lasting, though tough and intensely salty. Cowboys chewed it slowly, sometimes for long stretches, or softened it in stews. It required no fire, no preparation, and almost no space, making it indispensable for men constantly on the move. Bread, when it appeared, owed its existence to sourdough starter, a living culture that cooks guarded carefully. This mixture of wild yeast allowed biscuits to rise over open fires, creating dense but satisfying bread. Losing a starter meant losing the one element that made meals feel like more than survival. Some cooks went so far as to keep it warm through the night, knowing its value exceeded nearly everything else in the wagon. Salt pork filled the gap when fresh meat was off limits. Thick slabs cured in brine were sliced, soaked to reduce saltiness, and fried until crisp. The grease left behind became the base for countless other dishes, ensuring nothing was wasted. It was salty, heavy, and constant, an everyday companion on the trail. When flour supplies ran low, cornmeal took over. Cooked into mush or fried into slices the next day, it became one of the simplest yet most reliable foods available. Crisp on the outside and soft within, it required little more than water and heat, making it a dependable fallback when resources were stretched thin. Life on the trail revolved as much around the cook as it did the cattle. Far from being an afterthought, the cook held one of the most important roles in the entire operation. Rising before dawn, preparing meals, tending supplies, and even acting as medic and barber, he kept the crew functioning. A good cook could hold a team together, a bad one could break it apart faster than any hardship. Some meals came together through pure efficiency. Red-eye gravy, for instance, was made by pouring coffee into hot pork drippings, creating a thin but flavorful sauce that stretched across biscuits or whatever else was on hand. It cost nothing extra and wasted nothing, embodying the philosophy of the trail. Other dishes, however, bordered on the extreme. One such stew used nearly every part of a calf, including organs, and a unique ingredient found only in young animals. Slow cooked together, it created a rich, complex dish that tested a cook's skill. Done right, it was a delicacy. Done poorly, it became something barely edible. Occasionally, morale demanded something sweet. Dried fruits like peaches or apples could be rehydrated and baked into cobblers or pies, filling the air with a smell that reminded cowboys of home. These rare treats lifted spirits in ways no simple meal could, proving that food was as much about morale as it was about survival. Rice dishes offered another break from routine. Cooked with sugar, dried fruit, and sometimes milk, they provided a sweetness and softness that contrasted sharply with the usual fare. Even small variations like this carried emotional weight after weeks of repetition. Then, there were indulgences like fried dough, cooked in rendered fat and dusted with sugar. These treats vanished almost instantly, turning any cook who could make them into a legend among the crew. In a world of constant hardship, small pleasures carried enormous value. Cornbread, baked in cast iron over coals, became another staple. With its crisp crust and soft interior, it complemented beans and stews perfectly. It was practical, filling, and adaptable, making it a daily presence on the trail. When ingredients were scarce, ingenuity stepped in. Vinegar, sugar, and a few basics could be transformed into a pie that mimicked the taste of citrus desserts. It sounded unlikely, but it worked, surprising anyone who tasted it. The chuck wagon itself was a masterpiece of practicality. Designed to carry everything needed for weeks at a time, it held staples like flour, beans, coffee, and dried goods, all organized for efficiency. It was both kitchen and lifeline, moving ahead of the herd to prepare the next meal. Some foods came directly from traditions long established before cowboys arrived. Dense mixtures of dried meat, fat, and berries provided enormous calories in compact form, perfect for emergencies. These foods weren't about enjoyment, they were about survival when nothing else was available. Fresh meat, when it could be obtained, was a cause for celebration. Wild birds or unexpected opportunities provided a break from preserved foods, offering flavor and variety that lifted spirits instantly. Most nights, however, meals returned to simplicity. One-pot stews, combining beans, pork, and whatever else could be spared. These meals simmered all day, ready by evening to feed tired men gathered around the fire. Spiced meat dishes added variety, especially those influenced by earlier traditions of cattle driving. Rich, bold flavors broke the monotony and reminded cowboys of the cultural roots behind many of their practices. Even desserts found their place through dried ingredients. Rehydrated fruit baked into pies became moments of comfort, their aroma alone enough to change the mood of an entire camp. Nothing was wasted, not even bones. Roasted over coals, marrow became a rich, calorie-dense treat that could be spread on bread or eaten alone, delivering energy in its purest form. Flatbreads cooked quickly over fire provided another versatile option, used to scoop, wrap, or accompany nearly any dish. These simple breads reflected influences that had shaped cattle culture long before it became widely known. Coffee tied everything together. Strong, bitter, and constant, it fueled long days and restless nights. Brewed directly over fire, it was less a drink and more a necessity, woven into every part of trail life. Occasionally, wild plants added much-needed nutrients. Greens gathered along the way were cooked with pork, offering relief from deficiencies caused by repetitive diets. These additions weren't just food, they were essential for survival. When time was short, quick meals filled the gap. Thick gravies made from fat, flour, and scraps were poured over whatever was available, creating the illusion of a full meal when supplies were running thin. Some methods revealed surprising science. Cooking cornmeal in contact with ash triggered chemical changes that unlocked nutrients otherwise inaccessible to the body. Though the cowboys didn't understand the science, the practice had been refined over generations before them. Even breakfast carried moments of comfort. Pancakes made from sourdough starter, cooked over open flames and topped with syrup, brought a taste of home to an otherwise harsh existence. And then there was the rarest meal of all, fresh steak cooked directly in the coals. No pan, no grill, just meat placed into intense heat, searing instantly and locking in flavor. It was raw simplicity at its finest, producing a taste unmatched by modern methods. In those moments, silence fell over the camp as every man focused on the meal in front of him. These meals were never about luxury or presentation. They were about endurance, creativity, and survival, in a world where nothing came easy. Each dish told a story of adaptation, of making something from almost nothing, and of finding moments of satisfaction in the harshest conditions.